Hello everyone, I'm Daniel, and I'm going to do an ode to one of my favorite cards in the game, which is Calling in Favors. It's a neutral card, so everyone can take it. Have you tried this card out? Well, I hope you have. It's one of those cards that I kind of wish were still in the new Chapter 2 environment, and who knows, maybe it will be, and I'm going to make the case that it probably should be. All right, it's a one cost event and it's level 0, so you can include it in your deck right away. And it's got the text, favorite trait. Choose an ally asset you control, so one that's already on your play area, return it to your hand, put it back in your hand, then search the top 9 cards of your deck for an ally asset and play it, reducing its cost by X, X being the cost of the ally asset that you return to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So essentially, you take a card that is already in play, you put it back into your hand, waiting to be played again, hopefully. But you're doing this really good search effect that looking at the top 9 cards is a pretty good amount for any ally. You don't have to know what it is before you search, and it might even be the same ally that you just returned to your hand, another copy of it, of course. And then you get to play it, reducing its cost by the amount of the earlier ally. So this is potentially a substantial discount. You're paying one, of course, to play this card in the first place, but pretend you had a 6 cost ally in play, Leo DeLuca perhaps. Probably anything you find is going to be cheaper than that. So you get to just get a free play out of it. It's the search effect though, right? It's the fact that you're getting this out of your deck and playing it right away. That's really good. Now, there's a lot of good allies in the game, and there's a lot of good story allies. So likely you've got something to fish out of your deck that is going to be good. But a lot of decks actually can do better than just that, which is usually where you find the home of calling in favors. So let's take a look at what I think are a few cool synergies for this card. First, we'll talk about the investigators that care about ally assets in the first place, and there's a few of them. I wish there were more. Then we'll talk about some allies in particular, and a couple of event cards that do some neat things or interesting things, I think, with calling in favors. So, first, those investigators. It's really just Leo Anderson and Charlie Kane who care about having allies either in play or in their hand, which is exactly what calling in favors is all about. So, Leo Anderson. His ability is, after your turn begins, play an ally asset, reducing its cost by 1. All right, so you've got an ally asset in your hand. You're going to put it into play without spending an action, reducing its cost by 1. And then, sometime later, you'll play Calling in Favors, which costs 1, and you'll get to search the top 9 cards of your deck for an ally asset, get to put it into play, and it's going to cost uh, the amount that you paid for that original ally asset, except for you didn't actually pay the full cost of that original ally asset. You spent one less. So there's a little bit of discount on the overall resources that you're spending. Now, of course, on a future turn, the ally that you just returned to your hand when you played Calling in Favors can be played again, which is where I think calling in favors is important other compared to other just search effects, is that you want this ally back in your hand. You want to play it again for some reason. And for Charlie Kane, who has 3 additional ally slots already and wants these allies in play, getting them into play as quickly as possible is the name of the game. So barring charisma for other investigators, Charlie, of course, is just a unique ability that he's got multiple allies that can go into play at once. So let's pretend you have, I don't know, a guard dog or something like that, costs 3. You bring it back to your hand, you get to fish out maybe a beat cop, play that for 3 less, and then you'll find some time to play a guard dog again. And now you've started to fill those ally slots quicker than you normally would be able to. Now, of course, you have a lot of different allies to choose from in Charlie. You get everything in the whole game. For Leo, you're just getting the 0 to 2 rogue allies and 0 to 5 guardian ones, as well as the neutral ones. And I think there's some specific synergies that are kind of neat with some allies, and a lot of them can be taken by these two guys. Of course, everything by Charlie. So let's take a look at a few of those things. I really like to highlight the allies that have some kind of uses, and there's a different type of use beyond just actual printed uses. So if you think about Gregory Gry, who has 9 resources as uses, he comes into play with all of those tokens. And once you use them all up, and that's getting you a lot of money, what do you do with Gregory? He usually just gets killed off. You use him for the soap that he has. But for calling in favors decks, you can return him to your hand, fish out another ally to play, maybe even play the Gregory again sometime down the line, and you've made even more money essentially. You're saving the $3 on the new ally. You can play Gregory again, get the 9 resources back after a few more turns. It's pretty cool. It's like a legit engine to make a lot more money than you otherwise would have had. Speaking of that, David Renfield doesn't have uses on him, but you put tokens on him. You put Doom tokens on him to get resources back. And it's very, very strong. But the problem is you're playing with Doom. How do you remove the Doom from David Renfield? There's a few ways, but one cool way is to just simply return the card to your hand. Once the card leaves play, all the tokens on it leave play too. So if you stack up a bunch of Doom here, then play Calling in Favors and bring it back to your hand and find a new ally, you're doing two things at once. You're clearing all the Doom, maybe playing David again later, but also fishing out a new allied and playing immediately with the cost reduction. It's really good. Then, of course, there's the other kind of tokens that usually go on allies, which are the damage and horror ones. So Beat Cop level 2 has essentially three uses of his ability to put damage on him to deal damage to any enemy at his location. That's really good, but wouldn't it be better if you could keep doing this beyond just those 3 that would then defeat him? Well, just put 2 damage on him and maybe a horror, play Calling in Favors, return him to your hand, and then you can play him again. Obviously, very good in someone like Leo who gets additional discount for playing him again. Of course, you also are going to fish out maybe yet another Beat Cop from your deck. That's really quite good. Now, there's another type of use, which is not quite uses like you're seeing here, and this is the enters play allies. There's a few of these. I kind of wish there were more, but when you play them, something cool happens, but then they're just there. They don't really do much while they're in play. Medical student, chief among them, you play medical student, heal 1/1 from a investigator ally at your location, and then you just want to kill the medical student somehow. Or play Calling in Favors, bring the med student back, play a new ally, get to play med student again later. Pretty good. In this case, Calling in Favors is kind of recouping the resource loss that you when you play the med student for the first time. So now you kind of have the resources back, net resources, to play med student again. Same thing with art student, which gets you a clue, and lab assistant that draws you a few more cards. Now, when your deck gets a little bit low in terms of how many allies are left in it, that's where Calling in Favors is a bit, not so good. But there's a few ways around that. One, of course, is just have more allies. Another, I think, with Lab Assistant itself is that you're drawing more cards to hopefully flip your deck back over again if you're playing a a deck that's Seeker for the most part. And I guess I should shout out Mandy Thompson here. I only talked about Leo and Charlie before, but Mandy Thompson has a special synergy with Calling in Favors where you get to either search more, up to 12 cards, or you can search for 2 targets. You can get 2 allies out of your deck. Again, you might run out of steam and not actually have any allies left, but be more aggressive with your Calling in Favors earlier in the game or flip your deck over. All right, one more ally in particular that's very special, of course, are the sled dogs. You want 4 of them in play. If you have, 2 of them, they can fill one slot, one ally slot, and then the other 2 could fill another slot if you have another one through something like Charisma. How do you get them? Well, there's a few ways to search out allies, but none better than the level 0 card here, Calling in Favors. The sled dogs don't do anything particularly interesting in terms of uses, but they do have some soak, so it's not bad to put a couple of, damage and horror on one of them, put them back in your hand, and then be able to search out the next one. So that is a combo that people do, and it works reasonably well. All right. Last thing is a few event cards that kind of go nicely with Calling in Favors as well, if you can manage it. And that would be Motivational Speech and Hit and Run. Both of those came out in Scarlet Keys. Motivational Speech, the upgraded one, is new from the Drowned City. All right. So Motivational Speech itself, lets you play an ally from your hand, reducing its cost by 3. So the intended play pattern here is that you've got an ally in your hand, you play motivational speech, it goes into play, and then you could do calling in favors to then bring out another ally from your deck. So you haven't really spent much money for all of this because you were able to play motivational speech. Now, the one problem with motivational speech that I found is that if you draw it too late and your allies are already in play, you're like, welp, that's where calling in favors comes in again. This allows you to pick up an ally that's in play and then have a valid target for motivational speech. You're going to refresh the uses on it or whatever else you're trying to do and get a new ally, as well as wanting to play that new ally from your hand. Hit and Run does something kind of funny with this too. If you happen to have all three of these around, well, especially Hit and Run and Calling in Favors, Hit and Run lets you play an ally, well, put an ally into play without paying for its resource cost. It's just the one for Hit and Run, but it still has a resource cost on it. And that makes it a valid target for calling in favors. So you fast hit and run, say, a Leo DeLuca into play, who costs 6. Then you get to calling in favors, maybe, I don't know, another copy of Leo DeLuca. And now you've spent only one resource for this guy and one action. That's really, really good if you can line things up. That's maybe not realistic, but it is kind of fun to think about. The upgraded motivational speech is a little similar in the sense that you're now reducing the cost by its entire cost. So you're maybe getting a free Leo DeLuca, and then maybe you can fish out an agency backup. I don't know, something like that, where something that's really, really expensive is no longer all that expensive. So uh, that's basically it for Calling in Favors. I think it's a fun card. I've played it in Joe, I've played it in Charlie and Leo, of course, and Daisy Walker have done it. You really do need a chunk of allies. I'm not going to put this in the deck unless I have less than 6, because you want to have valid targets. And choosing some fun allies from across the spectrum to whether they have uses or you're just trying to find them, right? Sometimes it's just, I want that ally, it hasn't shown up yet, so it's good to do the search because search effects are strong. But the other shenanigans we talked about here make that go up a little bit and is quite fun. I think it's a good addition to the game. I hope we see this again. I hope we still see ally decks in the future. And to me, Calling in Favors is one of the linchpins. All right, that's it for me. I'll see you again in another video.